The following audio may contain adult language and themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to History and Mystery in Kansas City, the history podcast about all things unsolved and unexplained in Kansas City and the surrounding areas. I'm Laura. Today I'm on my own, and I wanted to talk about the Hutchinson salt mine disaster. I never heard of this until recently when I was just researching for things to talk about, and I saw this, and the thing that struck me was the amount of damage was so great, and there was 2 lives lost, and that is a huge deal, but I was really shocked that there weren't more deaths, because it is a very big disaster. So the scene is in Hutchinson, Kansas, of course. It's an hour northwest of Wichita, Kansas. And this happened January 19th of 2001. Hutchinson actually was known as Salt City because of the salt mines, and they were 600 feet below the surface. And it covered 980 acres underground. So it was a typical day, people going to work, going to school, drinking coffee at the coffee shop, when suddenly there's an explosion. And it's at a store called Decor, which was party supplies. And we all know that's full of paper, and it went down fast. The store next door was called Woodies, and it was an appliance store, and it also exploded and burst into flames. The blast was so powerful, it shattered windows more than a block away. Later that day, 3 miles away, mud and rock and water shot up 30 feet into the air. It was pushed out by natural gas and salt water. So these geysers were popping up all around town, mostly in the east side. And after gushing up, these geysers caught on fire. Sinkholes formed around town, cracks were forming, and water and brine just gushed out. Part of the town was on fire, where the gas was escaping, debris everywhere. People are panicking, understandably. They evacuated nearly 200 homes and 40 businesses. Can you imagine just drinking your coffee and all of a sudden there's a fire shooting up next to you, cracks in the fucking street, and geysers 30 feet in the air, and sinkholes? Oh my God, that would scare the hell out of me. So the fire department came and they thought it was a gas leak. Of course. Logical. They called the gas company to have it turned off, but after the gas was shut off, the fire still raged on. An employee from the gas company went to the site, and between them and the firefighters, they discovered that it was not a gas leak. The firefighters determined that it was natural gas, mostly methane. And methane is odorless. So this created a panic because the residents couldn't tell if it was in their homes or not. The following day, a gas explosion at a trailer park near the geysers in the eastern part of Hutchinson led to the death of 2 people. The trailer park had the skirting around it for insulation, and the gas just built up underneath there, and it's assumed that they went to cook breakfast and the whole trailer went up in flames. Their names were John and Mary Hahn, and it was in the Big Chief Mobile Home Park. And of course they didn't know because they couldn't smell it. The contractors traced the cause to Hutchinson salt mines. In the 1800s, prospectors found enormous salt deposits under Hutchinson. They used what's called solution mining, and I had to look this up because I had no idea what it was. So they basically drilled these deep wells into the salt and then injected water into the wells to dissolve it, and then the brine solution was then pumped back out and then refined. This created empty caverns underground, and they used these caverns as storage facilities, storing things like original films like Star Wars and props from the movie set of Wizard of Oz. Had no idea. That's crazy. Geologists in Hutchinson determined that the eruptions had sprung from an underground gas storage field that was 7 miles away. They used thermal imaging to detect heat from the escaped gas and ground penetrating radar to map underground features. The Yagi storage field was opened in the 1980s to store propane gas in steel-lined wells. However, they had a financial crisis and they had to close. So they plugged the wells with concrete so they wouldn't leak. In the early 90s, Kansas Gas Service took over the field and they reopened the caverns, but instead of storing propane, they stored natural gas. Shortly after the explosion, technicians at Kansas Gas Service noticed a drop in pressure in one of the storage wells. When they looked into it, they discovered it had been leaking slowly for 3 days. When they refilled the well on January 14th, technicians did notice a minor pressure drop, but they didn't think it was a big deal. They thought it was normal contracting and expansion. But after the explosions, they put two and two together. They sent hundreds of employees out around town to search for gas leaks. NASA actually flew 2 methane detecting missions to see if there were any unknown gas vents. They used sensors that could detect trace amounts of methane. The 2 agencies discovered that the gas was moving through underground caverns, the old salt mines, and the wells. They drilled vent wells strategically around the town, and this allowed for a controlled release of gas, and when it came up to the surface, they burned it up. For years, the local utility had injected natural gas between 600 and 900 feet down into the old salt caverns, and they stored it in a rock layer believed to be airtight, so it could later be pumped out and sold. But the gas had leaked and migrated miles into an abandoned injection well, once used as a salt mine, and then it shot to the surface. So that's what caused the initial explosion. So gas storage wells operate under the assumption that deeply buried layers of rock will prevent injected substances from leaking into the water supply or back into the surface. But in this case, the material basically defied logic. The injected material did something that scientists said was impossible. It migrated over a large distance, traveled upward through rock, reached the open air, and then blew up. And I have a quote here from Jason Hollard, who was working the night before, and he came back to help. He was with the fire department. He said, "I was on a reserve apparatus. We have reserve engines. I stayed at the fire station. We shut off all medical responses, and then we protected the rest of the city with our 4 firefighters and 1 fire truck while everyone else was down at the explosion." It was scary. It was a really scary situation because you never know. You have to look back in history in Hutchinson. When they did the salt mining, they would go and put in brine wells. You would go and you would have all these abandoned pipes stuck in the ground, 3, 4, and 500 feet deep. It was just an open hole for that gas to find. It was like a chimney, and boom, whatever was sitting on top of it, it's an ignition source. Look out. It took over a month to burn off the 143 million cubic feet of gas. That's insane. The city was officially declared safe March 29th, 2001, and there was an estimated $90 million in damages. So that is the Hutchinson salt mine disaster. And like I said, I'm really surprised that it didn't kill more people. I mean, these were busy offices downtown, busy stores, and then these geysers and flames and sinkholes are popping up all over town. There were some injuries, of course, but it sounded like they were all minor. It's amazing to me that that happened and it wasn't worse than what it was. It could have been so much worse. But yeah, that's all I have, and I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to share it because I had never heard about it. I know it's not in Kansas City, but it's decently close. So if you have any stories you want to send about Kansas City or the surrounding areas, you can email me at historyandmysterykcpod at gmail.com. Or check out the Patreon. The Patreon is patreon.com/historyandmysterykcpod. And all of the links are on that page. And if you do sign up as a Patreon member, there's a $2 a month or a $5 a month. The $2 a month lets you have access to all of the episodes, because there are some that are only on there. And if you do the $5 a month one, you get access to all of those, plus you get merch. I appreciate everyone who has donated to the show. We really appreciate it, and we are trying to make this better quality, more interesting for you guys. And in the meantime, stay aware, alert, and alive. Bye.